Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. There is a reason why you're all here today. This is important for our future, for the Hispanic community, but also for the future of America. And you're here today because you care about the calling of unification, because we have not been shy about saying what we're doing is actually try to unify the community. And there's only one question that we want to solve, which is what unites us. So we're here today to work, and we have a lot to do, so we're going to get going. At the UN last year, in December, we gathered more than 350 leaders that every one of them had a voting device in their hands and responded to the things of what is going to be our shared agenda. What are the issues that we all care about? Because it is clear to us the many things that divide us. It is very clear to us all the differences we have. But what are the three things that we can all agree on and that we can care about? And we call that the Vision 2020. And people voted in a very long day. And we voted for three main things. The number one is education. The number two is financial empowerment. And thirdly, the change of our perception, an improved perception of ourselves. So today is time to make that framework a game plan. We're here in Chicago because this is the place in which we're going to transform that framework, that shared dream, into a game plan for Hispanics. And why Chicago? Why? Because there's no other place to start a game plan than Chicago. Hispanics make more than a third of the Hispanic population here. A Hispanic make more than a third than the Chicago population. It is a vibrant entrepreneur community. You go to Calle 26 and you just feel that vibrancy of the entrepreneurs caring. But not only that, 43% of Chicago Latinos are homeowners. That's the number we would like to have country-wise. And not only that, but in Chicago, 11 out of 50 alderman seats are Hispanics. That's 22% political representation. That is the example of the country. That is exactly how Hispanics should be represented in politics. But not only that, the community plays a critical role in enhancing the present and the future well-being of the city. And today, for example, you have the greatest, bold, progressive courage that I want to see in other places in America, where you're actually passing legislation to say that every public company has to have a seat on the table for Hispanics. That is bold. That is why we're in Chicago. But the reality is that if we can make it here, if Hispanics can unify here, if Hispanics manage to be seen and heard and valued here, we can make it everywhere. So it is very important that we get that working, like leave our labels and, sleeve, how do you say that? Remangarse las mangas y ponerse a trabajar today, because we have a lot to do. So the time is now, and we have to start now. And so let me actually just show you how we're going to do this. We're going to do this interactively, and everybody is expected to actually play a role. And I want to start by saying we will vote, we will count your vote. So I want you to take your phone with you, and we're going to make this a very interactive, day. So take your phone, everyone. When I mean everyone is everyone. I'm just going to be checking you out. And we're going to start rehearsing how we're going to do the voting today. So I want you to text HLS Chicago to the number 22333. You copy that? You got it in the screens? Chicago, HLS Chicago to the number 22333. We're not going to start until we have 100% of participation, so I recommend we do it. So our fingers are crossed that on the technology side everything is working, but even if there are issues, we will be able to see the report that follows. So you got it? Everybody got it? Yes? Anybody with issues? One more minute? One more second? It's just go to your text messages as the way that you would be texting someone else and just say HLS. You got it, Robert? Someone with a problem here? Can we send our team to help? Yes? All right, so the first question is, what sector do you represent? And that is, you're going to be choosing the letter. And you have to choose A for media, B for business, C for technology, D for civil society, E if you're a politician, F, arts and culture, and G, other. All right, you get it? You have it in the screens. You just have to type the letter. Don't have to write the name. So we have a number of people from business. I can see that it's almost half of the percentage of people that we have here. All right. Michelle, do we call it? All right, we got it. Now, what name? This is a warm-up question again. What name do you prefer for the community? Hispanic, Latino, Latina for B, or Latinx for letter C? Don't cook, I don't see you voting. All right, I know your name, so I'm going to start calling you out. All right, Latina, it says, there we go. All right, so I'm going to, this is the way that we're going to be operating. The last thing I want to say before actually breaking for lunch is that this is going to be a working session. We're here because we care about our community. We're not here to listen to pledges, corporate pledges, or actually to talk about ourselves. We're here to talk about the community. We're here because you are here because we think that you're a champion, that individually you have made it. And we're here just to come to the individual success, to bring the collective action, to generate change. So with that, we hope that you're going to be enjoying lunch, and so that we can get ready to go just in a couple of minutes. Thank you for being here. My name is Claudia Romo Edelman, and I'm really delighted to have you all here. The next set of questions are questions that we asked through our Hispanic sentiment study to more than 2,500 people with Sino Group, commissioned by Sino Group. And we also asked the same questions, the exact same questions that you're going to be responding to the 350 leaders at the United Nations that came. Are you ready? All right, so bring it on, Michelle. Let's start. The question is, throughout the last decade, 86% of all new businesses in the US have been launched by US Latinos. Is that very surprising? Letter A. B, somehow surprising, not surprising at all. C. D, not at all surprising. Or I knew that fact already. E. That's going to be the same question all the time, so we're going to be responding A to very surprising, to E, I knew that already. Okay? Do we have that? And that means this is, the average is more or less that you're getting closer to 60% of somehow surprising and very surprising. If I put that together, that makes that 60% of the room, the people in this room, are very surprised about a fact that everybody should know. And I'm going to compare this to what the United Nations, actually what the people in the street said last September, 64%. So we're quite similar in our understanding of a basic fact, such as 86% of every new job in this country since the Great Recession has been created by Hispanics. We need to know that. Next question. The high school dropout rate for Hispanic Americans has greatly decreased throughout the past 2 decades, falling to 12% in 2014 from 32% in 2000. So our Hispanic high school dropout has decreased to a magnificent number. Very surprising, A, to already I knew that, E, voting. Okay, so we're making a lot of progress here. Most of the people, almost like 40. Oh, it's moving around. Okay, so this is mixed. This is one of the. All right. Okay, stop voting, people. There you go. You're making it hard for me. All right, a lot of people knew that already. This is good. Next question, please. Latinas create businesses 6 times faster than any other group in the United States. Latinas create small businesses 6 times faster than any other group in America. A, very surprising. E, I knew this already. Your vote. A lot of the people seems to have known this fact already. Actually not. I like that you're very honest. I like the honesty. Thank you so much for being honest about that. Finding is very surprising. It is almost a 43% of people in this room, the leaders in corporate America in media that are surprised about this fact. We want to compare this with the street. 63% of people in America, Hispanics in America, did not know that Latinas were the entrepreneurs of the century, and we create small businesses 6 times faster than any other group. Next question. If current Latino-owned business follow the average rate of growth of U.S. business, they would add a $1.4 trillion to the economy. That means if Latino-owned businesses follow the average rate of growth of U.S. businesses, they would add $1.4 trillion to the economy, meaning we are the economic power. Who knew this? A, very surprising, E, not surprising. This is very mixed. So a lot of people this is very mixed compared to the people in the street, which more than 50% of the people were surprised. Pretty much, okay. So this is something that is not very surprising. It seems to me that you're in business and you know that there's a market and that we contribute. Next question. There are currently 11 Hispanic CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. Actually, we lost one, so we're 10 with PG. There you go. A, very surprising. E, I knew this fact already. Very surprising. Oh, moving down. All right, everybody knew this, that it's only from Fortune 500 companies, we actually represent less than 10%, by far less than 10%. And actually not true. Yeah. All right, so we knew this already. Okay, so moving on. The next question. Hispanic buying power reached $1.4 trillion and is expected to reach $1.8 trillion by 2021. That's in 2 years. We're moving from $1.4 to $1.8 trillion in purchasing power. The size of our wallet is explosive. Do we knew that? Did we know that? A, very surprising. E, not surprising at all. Dawn, I don't see you voting. I'm picking up on Dawn, my love. There you go. All right. So do we have it? We knew that fact already. A lot of people knew this fact. All right. All right, let's everybody get into the same page, because before we get into a full conversation about the Hispanic community, we have to have the same facts. We are the people. We're 18% of the population, and that means 59%, 59 million people, and by 2050, we're going to be 1/4 of the population will be Hispanic. Can I get the next one? We're the youth. 1/3 of Hispanics is younger than 18 years old. 6 in 10 are millennials or younger. We're the economic power. Hispanic GDP was $2.1 trillion in 2015. The GDP, Hispanic GDP, is growing 70% faster than non-Hispanic GDP, which is actually shrinking, than the country's non-GDP. Consumer market is $1.5 trillion. And we are the entrepreneurs. We are the job makers. Latinos account for 1 out of every 5 new entrepreneurs in America. Our firms grew 22% between 2007 and 2012 compared to non-Hispanic enterprises that shrunk 2%. Our 46% of growth employment is attributed to our community. My Latinas, we create, as we said, 6 times faster than any other group in America, our businesses, like Agustina here. But not only that, we increased 87% of Latinas being entrepreneurs. And that means that half of every job that we create, half of every firm is created by a Latina. And this continue to happen, and this will continue happening because of our values, because we are hard work. 8 in every 10 Hispanic has said that work matters, and they actually will it's core to their values. We're fighters. I'm just going to say hello, Maria Rios. Come and join us here. Thank you for joining. We're a fighters community. We don't give up, and we actually think that part of what we want to achieve in our aspirational value chain is to be successful. We're ambitious. 6 in every 10 Hispanics, according to the Latino Donor Collaborative, wants to actually, has a better, is not only optimistic, but also aspirational and wants to get to a better place than their parents. And we care about our families and friends. There is no Hispanic that is not based on actually supporting their community and their parents. And we're all of that. That means that it is clear for all of us that we're the voters, we're the taxpayers, we're the fighters, we're the economic power of this country, we're the middle class of America, the muscle. And yet, despite these great numbers, we're underrepresented, misrepresented, and undervalued. We're 18% of the population, and we're only represented by 1% in political spheres. We're 18% of the country, and we're 1% of the media share overall. That is an incredible discrepancy. It is a huge enigma. And not only that, we're misrepresented. We're not represented as the hardworking fighters, aspirational, optimistic family and vice people. The number 3 associations that we have overall, according to the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, is number 1, criminals, number 2, pizza deliverers, and number 3, waiters. Is that who we are? No, and not only that has a price, that has a toll, because Hispanic trust is bruised. And this is something that I hope that my honorable husband, Richard Ellman, will talk to us about it. Because it doesn't come like for free, that we're so hardworking and that we bring so much economy to the country and that we're not seen and that we're not heard and we're not valued. That has a price. That has a price in the trust that we have in the country and the trust that we have in ourselves and the trust that we have to deliver and be seen and heard in politics and everywhere. So that doesn't make sense. This is the enigma of the century. This is absolutely reversed. And we shouldn't actually allow this situation to happen. But here is the good news, and the reason why we're here is because we went to try to understand the big enigma and went around and asked everybody, what is the knowledge gap? Because this equation makes no sense. So what is it that we don't know? Why are we not higher and more represented and more valued? And one of the main reasons that struck me and that is guiding the principles of what everything we're doing is that 77% of Hispanics have no idea of their own contributions to the country. You go figure that in your office and everywhere that you go around, 77% of your coworkers have no idea what they're doing. Or in your household, or in this hotel serving the food. Just go imagine that the workforce serving us today have no idea what they're doing. They just know that they bring a glass to the table, but they have no idea whether there's a lunch on the big. This is a disaster. This is topping us down as a community, and we have to put that number down. The insight number 2 that I got from the Hispanic Sentiment Study, the 77% was simply asking people in the street the 6 surprising facts that we asked you today. And no one knew. 77% of people had no idea. But when Hispanics are made aware of their contributions, 61% felt proud of the community and their contributions. 82% felt that we should be valued more, and 53% said, knowing this, knowing how much I contribute, knowing my value, I want to give, I want to do, I want to be more active. That is encouraging. The second insight that we got from the Hispanic Sentiment Study is that the Hispanic community is not a community. The Hispanic community is a group of 26 different origins of people that are fragmented. But here's the good news. The good news is that 90% of Hispanics feel Hispanics and identify as Hispanics. I want to ask you all to raise your hand and tell me if you identify and feel as a Hispanic. That's exactly what we have. The optimism has to come from those raised hands. Because if we feel Hispanic, the jump between feeling Hispanic and acting as a Hispanic community is small. And I tell you this because I've seen so many worse battles fought. You know, like poverty is a big issue to deal with. AIDS is a big issue to deal with. Feeling Hispanic and acting as a Hispanic community is not a big jump. It's a small one, and we have to do it. And so what the third point and then the last point that I want to make before like just setting up the stage for all of us is that we have to act because our young generations are losing faith. Young people are thinking, 61% of the people that we surveyed started feeling that the American dream was no longer what it used to be. And it is our obligation to actually make sure that we can deliver the country that, that we were fighting for. And it is logical. They have seen their mothers and their parents and the first and second generation working so hard and nevertheless not being seen, but we can change that. And so I want to leave you with one last slide, which is that we do not feel represented, according to the Hispanic Sentiment Study. And the reason why I bring this up is because of the incredible political year we're, the time of elections. 20% of the Hispanic community does not feel represented anywhere. And that is then, it makes it not surprising that people don't go and vote. But the 21% feel that they don't feel represented by any current political candidates. 24% feel that they are represented in government today. That makes it 80% don't feel represented. But here's the great news. More than 66% of Hispanics actually know that we will have a Hispanic president and we will see them in our lifetime. So thank you so much. Let's actually get David Gloria from Gallup to give us a little bit more data so that we can start the day being on the same page.
Muchas gracias. Good afternoon, everyone. I will be quick. It's an honor to be here today. And so the statistics I'll be covering represent 99% of the world's population via our world's poll. But today I will be focusing on the US Hispanics exclusively. To move forward, we must first understand where our people currently are represented. First, education. With one of the most important factors to Hispanics as a key to prosperity. Right now, 44% of all US Hispanics say they have a positive view on the overall education system. When asking US Hispanics with some form of post-secondary education, over half said they would change at least one of three things. They would either change their degree, they would either change their field of study, or they would either change the actual institution they attended. Over half are still finding their true calling and purpose, and they need stronger guidance. Another strong statistic that we have found is a drastic comparison between small colleges and universities and those that are large. U.S. Hispanic feel far more welcomed and cared for by faculty at smaller colleges. Overwhelmingly 44% versus only a 25% feeling of care at large universities. This reinforces the need for diverse faculty and administrative professionals of color on campus. Then, combine this comparison with the Gallup findings that most university alumni support networks are heavily marketed, but extremely ineffective. This leaves you wondering, who is guiding these first generation and overall young Latino students through some of the most challenging years and helping them maintain a positive overall outlook as they emerge into the workforce? With a lack of support and other factors, we found 33% of US Hispanics feeling very dissatisfied with the public education system. So there's a lot of talk about money. How do US Hispanics feel financially? Well, there are a lot of reports, and you can see them on the walls today on our sides, with a near $2 trillion economy powerhouse. And what is at the root of all this? To begin this year, 48% of US Hispanics felt that the US economy was worsening. For the first time in 8 years, Latinos fell behind whites in feeling better about their financial situation. We were leading. Latinos were always a minimum of 4 percentage points higher, and since 2017, plummeted. Now, only 5 in 10 reported feeling better off today financially than a year ago. This is down from a peak of 62%. Now, if we focus on the booming prosperity in our country and Latinos' contribution, we would expect high wealth in our pockets, correct? Well, unfortunately, that is not the case. Only 27% of US Hispanics say they have enough money to do what they want. If we keep in mind that the number one thing the world wants above anything else is a good job, and in 2019, companies are finally awakening and committing publicly to hiring and developing Latino talent. They're at the beginning of stages of making hiring of Latinos a focal point. Yet a majority of US Hispanics, 55%, say they do not have equal job opportunities as whites. Some of you may feel and say, I've never felt this way. And I'd say you do not represent the majority. This is an area of improvement for us, and not to see this room as a representative of our communities. There is a lot of work yet to be done. Finally, how do you as Hispanics feel in society? 1/3 of all Americans say relations between whites and Hispanics are bad. This is obviously problematic as we strive towards equality and advancement opportunities. In our latest assessment of class and society in the US, we found only a small percentage, barely 15% of US Hispanics feel very satisfied about the way other Hispanics are being treated in this country. One statistic that I'll leave you with. When we asked our communities, how satisfied are you with your life? 43 responded, very satisfied. Our communities need more, and I am honored to shed light on the feelings and perceptions of US Hispanics. I am proud to see a room so full, proud to see a national narrative being written, and dozens of companies publicly stating their commitment to the advancement of Latinos. The world is waking up and listening. Let the critical work of We're All Human and everyone's work represented here today continue. The next generation of Latinx are watching on social media, and they're paying attention, getting involved and rising. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much. And this is the panel that constitutes the Vision 2020. This is what I was referring to at the United Nations. People voted, and those votes of education, financial empowerment, and change of perception is called our shared agenda, and it is our Vision 2020. As of this moment, we're going to speed up. I know that we're late. We're going to speed it up. You will not hear any moderator or anyone introduce actually their panels by their names. You can find them on your programs because we're here to get to the point. So thank you so much for actually this panel, Vision 2020.
Okay. All righty, we're going to jump right in. ¿Estamos listos? Yeah. All right. Gracias, Claudia. What Claudia mentioned, right, we're focusing on those 3 priority areas that came about as the agenda at the United Nations in December. And we'll start off with, and you know, the panel is comprised of different sectors. We have media, tech, entrepreneurship, philanthropy, civil society, and corporate America. So each of our panelists here represents each of those industries. And the main purpose of this panel is to identify how within each of these industries represented, we can advance the Vision 2020 themes of education, financial empowerment, and perception through the lessons learned and best practices. We'll start off with education. The Vision 2020 concept is about mobilizing a community to have a shared agenda towards cooperation in the 3 areas. And the first question is, what are some best practices that you have seen from your industry to support this Vision 2020, specifically in education? And so I'll start off with Don, here to my right, to first share about philanthropic support in your area.
Sure, thank you. This is a great group, and Claudia, thank you for getting everybody together. Before you can really say what philanthropy can do, you have to be sure you understand what it can't do. When it comes to the world of education, philanthropy has basically a drop in the bucket of the money that the big public systems have. And so our job really is to look for those opportunities and gaps where we really can leverage the resources we have for the best purposes. At McCormick Foundation, for example, we have a sole focus for almost 30 years on early childhood education to get every kid, particularly in Illinois, but every kid in Chicago, Illinois, the best start they can, be ready for kindergarten, be able to read by 3rd grade, and so on. And we find, for example, that the Hispanic community, the number of slots taken up by kids from the Hispanic community is under the percentage that it should be. So we have to do some research. Why is that? How do we improve the professional development of the teachers, the pre-K folks, and improve access? And so that's where we would work with the hope that as we learn and come up with models and pilot things, that the big systems would take it on with the government money the public education system would take those jobs on and make it available for everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you, Don. And so I'll move on to Terry regarding the media and the role that the media can play.
So in terms of education, there's a great story of one of our DJs who says that, and like this, there's so many. For people who watched, I'm sure a lot of the people sitting in this room, we grew up watching Univision. And the DJ says that some girl went up to him and said, "Oh, I went to college because my mom heard about a scholarship on Univision Radio." And that really, I think, is a testament to the power that we have in media. I think there's some distinctions that need to be made between what happens in English language media and in Spanish language media, because I think we have and are given the ability to hyper-focus and be singularly focused on empowering the Latino community, and we do that. And we've been doing it. I don't mean to have a shameless plug here, but we live our brand, and there's those examples like that. So when we sit in our editorial meetings every morning, we oftentimes, first of all, we have more stories that come out about connecting our community to resources that are out there. Many of the people who are sitting in this room send me press releases all the time, and we have you on the air all the time because we are that connector. I think that's also the beauty, right, of broadcasting, why I fall in love with it, because we can make that incredible change by amplifying the message and connecting the community to those resources. So
Awesome. Thank you, Terry. And I know you supported this event and the ASA event as well with the news station. Alberto, can you share a little bit more specifically how we can empower the community to take control of our future?
I think that the most important thing that we need to do is we need to take control of the narrative. We can't let anybody tell our story. We need to be telling our stories. We need to be telling our stories of success. Our kids, our people need to see how far they can go. And the only way they can do that is if we empower them and if we show them how far they can go. Our dreams have been cut short. We've been dreaming short. We need to dream, like Claudia was saying before, about being the president, the next president of the United States. Our dreams need to be big, and we need to believe that. Let's tell our story, and again, let's not let anybody say who we are.
Thank you. We're moving on to the second area of financial empowerment, which can mean a lot of things, from starting a small business, seeking different types of financial services. The bigger purpose here is to strengthen financial well-being, and this is a two-part question. The first one being, what are some of the biggest challenges for U.S. Hispanics to achieve long-term financial well-being? And the second part, what are the opportunities for your industries to reduce the disconnect between available resources and financial services for U.S. Hispanics? So I will start with Raul. Can you tell us a little bit about the Resurrection Project is doing to improve the financial well-being in the community?
Thank you. If I could just say something on that education question. We need also options and choices. I'm a product of the public school, but we also need other models to make sure that our kids are educated. There's some good charter school models, and here in Illinois, there's a legislation to help tuition tax credits, legislation to pass so our kids can go to, for example, Catholic schools and get a good, solid education as well. So we need all sorts of options to get our kids educated. On the financial literacy education, most of our families have very few vehicles by which to build wealth over time. One of the few ways they do so is by buying a home the right way, making sure that they're able to buy it, maintain it, and sustain it. We saw what happened during the recession. Much of the lost wealth came from communities of color, particularly Latinos, but that has rebounded for Latinos. So two things. One, we've got to make sure that in doing it again, make sure they do it right, because the dangers are there. There's still a lot of predatory lending that's going on. And one of the challenges in our communities is the wealth gets sucked away by predatory lending. Instead of building it, it gets sucked away because there's too many still those kinds of situations that led to the recession. We also have to figure out a way that our community starts looking at other tools. Again, homeownership done right is one of the few tools, but they don't invest in the stock market. They don't have fancy insurance instruments. And the businesses that are being generated, as we saw earlier, they also have to figure out how to access capital, which is not necessarily available yet to our community. As an organization, we have a lot of wealth building strategies. We also develop assets in the community, both tangible and non-tangible assets, as well as community ownership is very important.
Thank you, Raul. The other part of the question is, what are 2 to 3 outcomes you have with the credit union and loans to undocumented immigrants?
This is a fascinating story that 5 years ago we helped rescue a savings and loan in the Chicagoland area. Most of the small banks did not have access to TARP funding, so they were left at their own peril. This one suffered the fate of being taken over by the FDIC. $140 million in loan. 1,100 families were about to get foreclosed on. So we were able to assist, and now 5 years later, 1,100 families, 95% still live in their home. Means they continue to build wealth, they're above water and so forth. Now, that's not the success story. Success story is 5 years later, this institution, Second Federal Credit Union now, has done over 1,500 more new mortgages, all 99%, I should say, to I-10 families. Over $200 million of community lending has been done in our communities. That is the power of our community. And in addition to that, it's also providing more wealth into these communities because it has created product that the community needs. So for example, if you're an undocumented immigrant and you bought a vehicle, you have very little choices. You go to a car dealership and they'll charge you 30% interest rates, right? Credit union is now doing loans between 7 and 8% depending on the profile of the family. So it's not just about building wealth, but building the right products so that people can have disposable income.
Thank you. And Marcelo, we'll shift to technology and entrepreneurship and its relationship to financial empowerment. You are leading some interesting work around technology and entrepreneurship. What are the opportunities you are seeing for entrepreneurs and technology to integrate into the market economy?
Well, thank you for the question and thank you for having us. Technology is changing the business and our lives, right? I mean, I think you see it. Every single industry is becoming disrupted as we speak. Last year, 2018, venture capital firms have injected $130 billion to help technology entrepreneurs to build their businesses. The first quarter of 2019, we are pacing at around $30 billion, right? So it's booming. Absolutely, it's a great opportunity. It is a career opportunity. We were talking about education. I would love to see tech entrepreneurship as a career opportunity and educate people to be good at that. But where are we Latinos? Latinos we are just getting 2% out of that money I mentioned before. And it's not that we are not doing things to help our community. We're doing many things. We have incubators, we have VCs really committing to help minority, but my challenge to the whole system is I think we need to change the how we are doing it, right? I think we need to really think differently, and I like to talk about being intentional, right? And being intentional in the way we collaborate as an ecosystem. We're all doing our small part very well, but we're fragmenting the solution to a problem that is going to be solved if we get all together in the same page. The second thing is being intentional, actually, with the industries that we want to play. There are industries that are very close to our hearts and where technology can actually help. Financial industry, fintech, big time. Healthcare, right? So the third thing is about being intentional about the amplification of our impact. Today, we are really focused on Silicon Valley, right? I mean, we look for entrepreneurs mostly in Silicon Valley, mostly in the East Coast. I was in Nashville a week and a half ago talking to entrepreneurs in the music industry, and they're asking for help. There are many Latinos there that need our help. So I will ask Silicon Valley actually to create a new acronym. SV is not Silicon Valley, suban el volumen. How do we hear the great things that we have in Silicon Valley across the US?
Thank you. Agree with that. to Don, can you talk about the role of philanthropy and its grant-making, philanthropic capital as a mechanism to support workforce development, leadership development, and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, it's an interesting area for philanthropy because we don't create jobs. You know, we're not business people building companies, but we're involved in all sorts of ways. We have in McCormick, we have a particular relationship in Little Village, so we're working on all sorts of economic development opportunities there, and we're about to start up a cohort of 5 supporting 5 entrepreneurs individually, Hispanic entrepreneurs, which we're excited about. We think largely they're going to be women as well. And this will be and this is not an investment because we don't want to take the wealth back. These will be loans and outright grants to young entrepreneurs who are building businesses, and so we think we can play a role there. We do workforce development and so on, but that's the kind of way we're going to get at it is sort of helping systemically and then some specific entrepreneurs to build their businesses.
Thank you. That's wonderful. And so what are the quick fire here? What are the main challenges that exist to achieve long-term financial well-being? Terry, we'll start with you.
I'm not sure that it's
We have 30 seconds each.
Oh.
Okay. This is a rapid-fire one.
I think to your point, I want to echo what you said, Marcelo, is just to think as the collective and the strengths in the numbers and owning our being Latino, because we blend in really just too well most of the time, and that sort of diminishes our numbers.
Thank you. Raul?
Immigration reform will add another $1.4 trillion to the economy, driven primarily by Latinos. Economic power equals political power, and that is very important. So we need more owners, producers, and decision makers in the Latino community, not just consumers.
Marcelo?
I think I would say we need to change our relationship with debt and really, you know, accept financial help to grow our businesses, right? I think we have like a negative perception about debt. So specifically in tech entrepreneurship, how do we get comfortable getting debt to grow our companies?
Alberto?
I'll give up my 30 seconds.
Okay. Don? I'll give back to you.
I think access to capital, and there
I
are.
don't think you're go ahead.
Huh?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you. And there are things, developing things with J.P. Morgan Chase here, and for entrepreneurs of color, and those are the kinds of things we want to continue to build access to capital.
Yeah. I added you on. I know
And
you
sorry,
weren't originally
yeah, I was
supposed
thinking of the next question, but actually I was thinking I had an answer there. And we need to encourage our companies. I come from corporate America, that we need to invest in economic empowerment. 90% of the investment that we do at Miller Coors goes towards economic empowerment with the Hispanic community. It's very important that we make sure that our communities thrive and that they do well.
Thank you. So our third pillar is perception, and so we're going to move into that. It's, misperception and stereotypes are key barriers for the growth of any community. The U.S. Hispanic community is often seen as takers, not makers. Let's talk about the opportunities you see in each of your industries to help change the visibility around the U.S. Latino community. So 2 to 3 examples, and we'll start with Terry. Media seems like the easiest lift. From your perspective, what changes are required and what can media do to help retell the Latino story? And what is the role of news media?
I think first of all, I think what we have is a PR problem, not an actual problem, which is that we have to change and own our own story, and that doesn't just happen within, I think we have to think about perhaps some larger campaign in which we can all own and then own that story. And then the other part I would say is we're really lagging behind in terms of English language television and the amount of Hispanics that are there. And what I will tell you is that a lot of Hispanics, because I have been in English language, that do make it tend to blend in and sort of give up that being Latino. So I think that does a disservice, right? It's not just the diversity, but also the inclusion in order to have the story form be reflective of our audience and really paint a picture of Latinos. And then the other thing is I would encourage the people in this room who are the ones who are paying for advertising to hold some sort of accountability to some of those television stations who are not, who are portraying us in an inauthentic way.
Do what Beyonce did. She walked out. Do you guys know about that?
Amen.
We walked out on Reebok for not being inclusive. Alberto, so as a representative of corporate America, what are some of the challenges and solutions you see for the community?
Well, I think that, again, the big challenge is a lack of understanding of our power, our potential, how strong we can be when we come together. Adding to that, the narrative that is not being controlled by us. So somebody's telling a different story of who we really are, a very negative story that doesn't match the reality. That has created, from corporate America, I've noticed 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when the first census came out that was talking about the power of Hispanic and the growth, it became really cool to be Hispanic. It was popular. We were going backwards and trying to regain, some people were going back and learning their language and regain and understand and own our culture. The last 2 years, I think that we've gone back to hiding a little bit. We need to come out of the hiding, and we need to show how proud we are, and we need to tell our story. The other challenge is that I believe that corporate America in the past had this feeling that it was a mandatory to take care of the communities in need. I feel today that mandatory is not there anymore. It's a good to do. So if it's a good to do, the only power that we have is to raise our voice and show what we can do and the power that we have. So telling our story, showing those numbers that really represent who we are and the power that we have will help everybody advance and take control of our future.
Thank you. So we have, I'm told, a minute left, right? So I want to jump into the rapid fire for this particular question. You know, Don, we'll ask that you each talk to your specific industry regarding what is one or two things your industry could do to promote and mobilize the shared agenda for the community, and what would they be? We'll start.
Well, there's a lot to choose from, and philanthropy can help across the board. One is community news and strengthening the voice in the communities and civic empowerment and civic engagement work. We're doing that. We're working on immigration and the census issues as well. And so I think there's a wide range of good topics there, and those are 4 of them.
Thank you. Terry?
I think that if more media would adopt the mindfulness that we see within Spanish language media about what are the portrayals, what are we putting on the air, and we know that there are children watching our television station every single day with their family, and they are crafting that narrative of who they are, and so hence, oftentimes I will say that is why we have the heads of companies, the people, so the astronauts on the air, so that these children begin to craft a different perspective of who they can be. And so I also, with that, take the opportunity to tell any of you who are in the room, you're clearly people who are very important and who are role models for all of our audience, that you reach out to me because I need stories like yours on the air, because that's the only way we're going to take back our narrative.
Thank you for offering that up.
Even though I already talked, but I think that one of the things that we need to do is to make sure that we understand that the opportunity is not a long-term opportunity. It's now. It's now when we need to act, and it's now when we need to take control of it.
I think I would say in the technology area to build a coalition between entrepreneurs, incubators, VC firms to really lift our cohort to the right level, right? And remember, I mean, technology is at the core of humanity, not only business. So we want to build technology with the same diversity that we want to find in the human race.
We need to be the sculptors of our own destiny and make sure that we get out of our comfort zone. Democrats take us for granted and Republicans don't understand us. And we need to figure out how to build the right alliances to make sure that our community progress in all areas. Right now in the New York Times, an article, part of the American Business Immigrant Coalition, where the voices are non-Latino fighting an anti-immigrant bill in Florida. So I encourage you all to look at it. That's the kind of work that we need to do.
Please join me in thanking the panel. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. A fireside chat now about like breaking myths. Not only that we are not very savvy in tech, but also like that we're not acquirable. So welcome, please, on the stage. My role model, I think that Agustina is like one of the perfect poster child, and Maria to talk about the acquisition story of Ulta, of this beautiful story.
Thank you. So Maria, you and I met back in April last year. And we began exploring acquisition soon after that. The reality is that we had already been working with Ulta for a while, and our technology was already being used by Ulta. But there was a point that we started exploring a different kind of relationship, right? So I wanted to ask you, what triggered this path? And also, how did Ulta approach the relationship?
Yes, absolutely. I think it was exactly a year ago that we met in person for the first time in LA. So it's funny how the timing works. So really the trigger for us internally at Ulta came from the digital innovation team, and we have somebody here from the digital innovation team, and their desire to really expand our agenda in technology and innovation and to really accelerate our development. So they reached out to our current partner, Agustina in Glam Street, and they said, hey, how can we make this happen in the next year? And Agustina, rightfully so, like a startup that is like scrabbling every day, every month to like get all the funding that she needs, she said, well, I need a longer term commitment and I need more resources. So for us, when we came back with that, we said, hey, let's just put on the table an acquisition because it would make a lot of sense for all of us, and it would meet both our needs and Agustina's needs. So kind of like that's when the conversation shifted from just a vendor, kind of like provider relationship to let's explore something more strategic.
So you were leading corporate strategy when all of this happened, so we were together in this process.
Now I'm in a different role, but yes, I was leading corporate strategy back then.
Yeah, and I imagine this was an important decision and strategy for the company, of course, because it changes how innovation was created, and innovation, a lot of the part of innovation is now created within the company, right? So I wanted to ask you what was unique and distinctive about my company, Glam Street.
Yeah, so many things. Like if you don't know what Glam Street does, I'm assuming everybody has the Ulta app on their phones, but if not, you should download it and go to the virtual makeup try-on, the Glam Lab. And this is kind of what Agustina, who's amazing and created an amazing team, has done. So it's not like a gimmicky Snapchat filter. The realism of this is amazing, and it's really important for us because it enables people to try on makeup virtually without actually putting it on your face. So the first thing that was distinctive about you was exactly that space, the development that you had done, the fact that augmented reality had a real consumer use case in beauty, that Ulta is one of the largest beauty players, really wanted to own that and kind of like craft our own destiny and not have a third-party vendor tell us what to do, and we saw that very important. The second thing that made Glam Street and Agustina and their team distinctive is that we knew each other. So we knew our weaknesses, we knew our strengths, we had already worked together, and for those of you who understand Spanish, mejor malo conocido que bueno por conocer. We knew each other, right? We knew that, and that was really good going in. And then the third thing that is really something that I want to highlight is Agustina's passion as an entrepreneur, her belief in what she was doing, how when we brought her in to kind of like share with our chief marketing officer the vision that she had of her company and her technology in beauty, how it resonated with the values of our company, what we see as a vision. Like you could see sparks flying between our teams and her team. Everybody was getting super excited. And literally that was like a moment where I was like, oh my God, this is actually gonna work really, really well. Like these people, all of them are gonna work together really well. So those were really the kind of like the three key elements of making your company so distinct.
So as we both know, this was one of the first ever acquisitions of Ulta Beauty. Mm-hmm. So it was quite a big deal for the company, right? And you led most of this process. I wanted to ask you, how did you approach the acquisition process and what were your key learnings from this?
So yes, this was one of the first acquisitions ever for Ulta, something that I feel very proud of, and everybody that worked with me on this, it wasn't only me, worked very hard and are very proud of. two things that we had to do was work kind of like internally and externally. So internally, we already had a mandate from the board to be very proactive in M&A. As a strategy team, we developed many different areas where we wanted M&A. One was enabling technologies and capabilities to bring them in. And we had already seeded the ground. We had already kind of like started participating in some due diligence processes and looking at other companies. So there was already that. So I had worked the internal angle. And then externally was working with you and building a relationship with you. You guys would, like, we started talking, I think like literally a year ago, basically on a weekly basis. I remember being in the car driving. I have a commute to Bolingbrook, which is a little bit long. Being in the car talking to Agustina, and like on a weekly basis. There were even times where my kids were in the car and Agustina knew them already before. So we really just worked. I really wanted to understand what were her priorities as an entrepreneur. What was she looking for? What were the things that mattered for her in a process like this to ensure that whatever kind of like we came to with and put a kind of like in front of you was meeting all of your needs. But then you asked me also like, what was it that I learned? Yeah. So the key learnings were really, I would never underscore the importance of like having that open conversation and communication. The fact that we talked every week. I did the same thing internally, and we were talking with our leadership team and the leading business team every single week. So just not underscoring how important it is to keep everybody in the loop and to ensure that you're bringing everybody along.
So we are both Latinas. You are from Colombia, I am from Uruguay. And I can say actually I enjoyed the process of the acquisition, which I think is rare. So how important do you think are the people behind the acquisition? And also, how do you think our common backgrounds helped build bridges between both companies?
Yes, so extremely important. It's absolutely all about the relationships. Any M&A process is about the relationships, especially when you're talking about a smaller company, because actually, if you think about it, we talk about it internally, we call it about an acqui-hire, like you're acquiring the people, because it's a very young company, so I can't even tell you how important the relationship is. And then the fact that we're both Hispanics and that we had kind of like a similar background was super important, and we were playing it in different roles. And actually, throughout the process, I didn't really see it. It was actually you, and I'll tell you guys this story later, when she pointed it out. But Agustina, in the meantime, was ensuring that her team felt comfortable working with a US-based company, that this US-based company was going to take care of them, that the integration was going to work, that this was like the right approach for her company. And she was doing that as a woman from Uruguay who was now living in San Francisco and had been doing this for a while. And then me on my end, coming from Colombia, now living in the US, I was actually doing this also kind of like unknowingly convincing my company that the first foray outside of the US was going to be in Uruguay, of all countries, and then it was okay and totally normal, and that we would be able to make this a successful endeavor. And it was actually Agustina who brought this up when we had kind of like a cocktail reception to celebrate the acquisition in Uruguay. And she turned around, she was giving this lovely speech, and she turns around and she says, I don't think this would have been possible, Maria, had you not been there at Alta in the role that you were in. And that was a very important moment for me, because I realized, as a Hispanic, I had done something for Hispanics. That was like the first time that I'm like, oh my gosh, I actually did something, and it was very natural, and it was authentic, and it actually created value, and I was able to convince a company of the value that we would bring, all of us as Hispanics, in this team that you built.
Yeah. So a little bit of a reflection. It's been 6 months since the acquisition. So I wanted to ask you what has happened over this time?
It's been amazing. So we worked through all of the little kinks of the integration and the back-end processes and systems and all of that, which is not the fun part. But we've been really focusing on blending the cultures, making sure that your team feels part of Alta, that you guys are part of Alta. So we got them new offices that look like Alta. We brought them here to participate like in our big leadership forum and like our onboarding sessions, etc. We've gotten into this cadence where Agustina's manager and that team travels all the time to Uruguay back and forth. So we've really focused on the culture. And then, just so you guys know, Agustina and the team have been delivering every single milestone that we had said. She's amazing, and she does that really well. So everything that we had kind of like planned out has played out. And we are super, super excited. And actually, when we announced all of these acquisitions, we had a really good return on our stock. So everybody's very excited about that.
Yeah, thank you very much. And again, this is a proof that this can be possible and that Latinos can achieve great things. So we are looking forward to see more examples like ours in the future.
Yes, please.
Exactly. Thank you so much. And that is the main reason why we wanted to bring you that. That is the face of the startups. That is the face of the startups that can be acquired, the Latina face. So I want more companies actually acquiring more Latina entrepreneurs and keep going. So today is all about solutions. We're going to move into trying to find what is working on the areas that we're going to be discussing. What are the 1, 2, or 3 priorities that we can all collectively say, you know what, I'm going to jump on that. Because you've said it before in the Vision 2020, collective impact really will make the change. And so we're going to be working on highlighting role models, bringing success stories of the things that can work. And I'm super glad to see Hispanics and Hispanics-hearted people here today that care about our community. I think that I disagree with one of the comments of the Vision 2020. Dr. Robert Rodriguez said it. Latinos are coming out with their Latinity even more. Like Mark Pritchard saying, the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer of Procter & Gamble saying, I'm coming out as Latino, that no one knew that he was Hispanic, is the trend that actually we're seeing. So don't hide away from coming out today. And for speakers, I just want to make sure that I do say it again, forget about your notes. I know that you have the questions, you have them already, just like talk from the heart. And from the heart, and you need us, we're strong, fragmented, we're not. And we have to unite on the things that matter. And that is why our next speaker is going to talk about something that I want to see more on top of the agenda of everybody, which is the census. So please join me on the stage. Stacy De Arroyo, from Vice President of Nielsen, please join and talk to us about the census. And why should we care?
Good morning or afternoon, everyone. I guess it depends where you're from. I'm from Los Angeles, so it's still morning. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Claudia, for the invitation. The importance of a proper census count seems to be one of the most misunderstood and hotly debated topics lately. So today I'm going to share a different side of the argument for the importance of an accurate count, one maybe that you haven't heard. Closer. No one's ever told me I haven't been loud enough. That's news. Now, census at its simplest is a complete count of our country's people, not our citizens. This statistical measure, though, has evoked tremendous emotion, has it not? And statistics typically don't do that. And we work in statistics all the time at Nielsen. But these statistics have a deeply human element to them. But the truth is, census isn't really about you or me or your tía or your abuelito or even la madrina del barrio, quien disciplina a todos los niños. You guys know who she is, right? If you don't, it's you. It's you. It's me in my neighborhood. ¿Qué haces tú? ¿Dónde está tu mamá? Siempre. But census is actually not about all of those individual people. It's about all of us, the state of us, collectively. So it's much more than a count. It's what comes of that count and what it represents. So to get an accurate census count, we have to count people in all communities without exception. Homeless, undocumented, hard to count communities, everyone. And this foundational measure is at the core of what is occurring now in our communities, and frankly, the Hispanic community is most at risk. So likely you've heard about the possibility of the addition of a citizenship question, right? By nod of heads, everyone's heard of this. This untested and potentially harmful question to the census will impact response rates. There's no doubt. Experts agree. This addition of the citizenship question also has the ability to lower response rates because of the fear, even among documented. And that, of course, leads to great implications for all Americans. Because if it's added, experts agree it will lead to a potential 6.5 million undercount. Sit with that for a minute. 6.5 million, that's the population equivalent of Miami or Atlanta. It's a massive, massive undercount, and it will rob precious resources from all communities, no matter what your ethnic heritage is. But the implications are possibly greatest for the 59 million Latinos who have quickly and unjustly become the embodiment of a new political narrative. Now, the national dialogue that you're most used to, probably most familiar with when it comes to the importance of an accurate census is really centered on the community impacts, right? That's what you hear a lot about. The fair distribution of federal and state dollars into communities for things like schools and healthcare and social and civic programs. And you also hear about the gain or loss of political powers, representation in the House, and even redistricting, which is huge here in Chicago, and recently in Michigan. I just read about that yesterday. I'm sure many of you did. And all of these are really critical community elements that the census population are the foundation for understanding. But, as I said earlier, I want to shed light on another side of that dialogue that is often overlooked, and it's the business and research implications and what you can do about it. So did you know, and I'm sure you did, that every industry in the United States makes business decisions based on census figures? Every single one. Decisions like assessing potential employees or site selection, product innovation, media, marketing, and entertainment planning, and growth and development planning. So census is the definitive benchmark for billions of dollars in economic activity, billions. And it's a foundational truth set for the demographic information, by the way, which no other body produces. So there's no way to really check or balance it. This means that there can be no margin for error, and it cannot be wrong. It cannot underrepresent our communities. Now at Nielsen, and many of you are familiar with Nielsen, right? Fantastic. At Nielsen, we are not excluded from the impacts of this. In fact, the population estimates and projections that come from census are used as a benchmark for our surveys, our economic and social science research, and our market research. We use it at a town-by-town, block-by-block level to build our television and radio panels, and thank you, Terry, for mentioning the importance of that when you were on stage. And we have to make sure that our samples demographically represent the cities that we're in by race, ethnicity, socioeconomics, all sorts of things. And having population estimates that are underpinned by census allow us to project ratings, right? The market share of a beverage manufacturer, or even to project what products to stock in geographic areas. Like the fact that we need more Materva in Los Angeles, very hard to find. Nobody here Materva fans? Oh, must be a Cubana thing. Okay, that's all right. You guys got to try it though. Materva, hashtag Materva. Okay. So Los Angeles, as an example, has an incredible population of Latinos. We, like many other big cities that you all do business in, definitely understand the grave implications of an undercount. Now, business is transacted on Nielsen data, so accuracy is critical, and we have an obligation to our businesses to ensure that any underlying data that we use is up to the highest standard. We also have an obligation to our communities to make sure that we're representing their preferences and their opinions. Amigos, we at Nielsen are so serious about this that we have boldly raised our voices and taken a very strong public position. We recently filed an amicus brief with the Supreme Court on the impact of the addition of a citizenship question. Our CEO, David Kinney, just this week was featured in an op-ed in the New York Times on the importance of an accurate Census 2020 to all of our businesses. But I want to be clear. The community position is, of course, incredibly important, but the business implications will equally hurt our community and our businesses, and frankly, American economic progress. When we are not counted, our voices, our opinions, our preferences, our accomplishments, and our challenges aren't counted either. And for businesses, this could lead to millions in lost revenue and opportunity. And this is very real for each of you professionally and personally. Faulty population data will lead to the misallocation of marketing resources, misinformed product development based on skewed behavior data. And because our community is most at risk, we will be severely understated. Our value, the largest community group in the country, our contribution to America's economic growth is marginalized. The contribution of your parents and your grandparents, marginalized. In business, decisions must be data-driven, and without good data supporting the value of investment in our community, your business decisions are undervalued. Please join Nielsen in raising your voice as a business and in supporting the importance of an accurate an accurate count for census. This matters to you, it matters to your business. I guarantee you, your business counts on it. Thank you very much. One of those in there?
Yes.
That's yours.
Sorry. There we go. I have the paper missing. All right, so this is the time in which we're going to be asking, I'm going to be asking all of you to raise your hand if by now, 60 or 70 minutes of listening to this data, do you get it that we're strong? Do you get it that we're strong? And that we're ready? And we are here, and we've never been stronger, thanks to decades of the work of so many leaders in which their shoulders we stand on. And many of those that have been actually working and come from Chicago. And I want to honor their work, and I want to honor their sweat and their work for decades to get us to the point where we are. And I want to start by thanking someone, our co-host, Juan Andrade, who has not been able to make it here because he's severely ill. And I want to actually start showing that unification that we're talking about by unifying our best wishes for a speedy recovery for Juan Andrade. And I want to recognize that today is possible only thanks to the people that I'm going to ask to stand up, and then after I name them, you help me, you join me by applauding them. My co-host, of course, Juan Andrade, Jose Luis Prado, please stand up, and Richard Edelman. Stay standing. Stay standing. I'm going to embarrass you. I know, stay standing. I know it's embarrassing, but we're going to do this. I also want to ask everyone that I'm going to list here to stand up, and you join me after I read the list to recognizing their effort. And these are my incredible, incredible strategic committee. Andrea Arbeláez, President and CEO of the Hispanic C-Suite Corporate Council, HC3. Kate, no clapping until the end. Kate Benson, President and CEO of the Chicago Network. Danielle Contreras, Technology Strategist of Microsoft. Donald Cook, SVP of Philanthropy of the McCormick Foundation. Delia Gutierrez-McLaughlin, the President and CEO of Aztec Innovation. Patricia Mota, President and CEO of the Hispanic Alliance of the Careers Enhancement. Paula Otero, Founder and President of La Carte People. Dr. Robert Rodriguez, President of DRR Advisors. Maria Salcedo, Vice President of Merchandising Strategy and Insights of Ulta Beauty. Juan Salgado, Chancellor on City Colleges of Chicago, who cannot join us today. Rachel Weiner, the President of Edelman Chicago. Please join me in recognizing this incredible strategic committee that has made it possible today. Thank you. I want to ask my co-hosts, Richard Edelman and Jose Luis Prado, to join me on stage while we thank our sponsors, PepsiCo Foundation and Richard Edelman, and our media partners. Please stand up if you're in the room. Al Dia, Comcast, NBC Universal, Telemundo, Hispanic Executive, Insider Inc., Latino Leaders, and the Alumni Society. Please stand up and recognize our golden sponsors and our media partners. Thank you very much to all our sponsors, gold, silver, and bronze sponsors, for making this possible. Now I would like to actually invite Richard Edelman to share some words, and Jose Luis, sit there so we can actually just hear these words and then close for the lunch.
So I actually have some data that I think you'll find very interesting. Edelman does a study on trust every year, and we've done it for 20 years. And here's a phenomenon. The most trusted institution for Hispanics in the United States is my employer. And this is a huge change. It's really important that trust has become local. And the new expectation, therefore, is that CEOs will stand up and speak up on race, on diversity, on pay, on training. Also, very fundamental, 2/3 of Hispanics, more than any other group in American minorities, are afraid of losing their jobs in the next decade to automation. The same 2/3 are afraid that they're not getting sufficient training to keep up. So automation for them is something to be afraid of, not something to welcome. So when you talk about tech and the promise of tech, it's also the fear of tech. The last thing I want to say about Hispanics is that trust of Hispanics is the most volatile of all the groups that we follow. It's much more affected by current events. You saw the low trust scores in part because of the way the administration talks about Hispanics, but it has a knock-on effect on business. Listen to this. This is very important. Hispanics of all the minority groups are the least trusting in business because they don't think that business has stepped up. And there's also a tremendous gap between Latinas and Latinos. It's 15 points. Women are much less trusting in business in the Latin community than men. They just feel not paid well enough, not promoted well enough, and not regarded well enough in terms of being safe at work. Last point about the Hispanic community. Of all the communities, this year we found the biggest jump in terms of news engagement. And it's not just that Hispanics are reading, it's also that they're sharing. It's the first time that we've followed that amplifiers, people who read and then share, are larger in numbers than just people who read content. That implies that Hispanics are inherently not just wanting to learn something, but to share it and persuade others. So as you consider your communications campaign, do consider those who are influencers and amplifiers as a key audience. So trust matters, and my employer, local trust, is the number one thing, and the CEOs have got to stand up and speak up. Thank you.
It's really amazing to see this tremendous gathering of Hispanic leaders. I believe in the 9 years that I have been in Chicago, I believe this is the most important event that we have had in our community, and all that is thanks to your presence here. So I want to celebrate that you have opened your busy agendas to be with us today. I want to introduce just myself a little bit. I was born in Mexico. I came to be president of Quaker Oats North America, the first Mexican to run a major US division for PepsiCo. And thank you. And today, what I believe is happening in our country, it's hugely important because you can think about diversity, and many times you think about social responsibility, values, decency, moral obligations. But when you think about the business case, and is why it matters to hire, promote, celebrate the Hispanic workforce. Why does it matter? It matters because it's in the best interest of corporate America. It's the only way our businesses are going to be able to cope with the innovation requirements, with the growth requirements, and with the engagement that needs to be created to build high-performing teams in all our companies, and that we all know, and the research shows that a diverse team performs better. That's a simple fact. So in this context, I would like to tell you that I celebrate that under the auspices of We Are All Human, in the big heart of Claudia, we are together here. And I thought of trying to capture the essence of this movement because I consider it a movement. And I think that for me, in my own words, as you were asking, Claudia, For me, it means that we are all human, we are all valuable, we all love America and treasure our heritage. We all can and want to contribute. All we ask is for respect and opportunity, and we will do our part. So, who is going to do it? It's us. When we are going to do it, it's now. I celebrate that we are together here initiating this movement in Chicago. Thank you very much.
That is incredible. Thank you so much for my co-host for making this happen. Thank you so much, Chicago, for welcoming us and for bringing your leaders to work every day and for believing in actually that we can do it. But one of the things that I want to make sure we do before we take a break is tell you the incredible agenda that you all see here in this program. It's powerful, and it's going to, if you're not a Hispanic, you should actually stay to learn about the trends and learn about the insights. And if you're Hispanic, you have to actually participate every single second to feel empowered, motivated, and ready for change. And we have to start doing that by making noise and sharing actually the stories that we're gonna hear. So I expect all of you to not only be very present in social media, but actually to get to know each other. So I want to actually, the reason why I wanted to have Richard and Jose Luis here is because we're going to ask you to do one last thing with your mobile, if I can have it here. So one very good tool, and you're gonna take your phones with you, please. One very good tool that I want everybody to have is, I assume that everybody has something like LinkedIn in their app. And if you don't, well, we can do it later. But at the end, you press on your LinkedIn, and a good way to connect is to do it now, because the time is now. So you're gonna go to your LinkedIn page, and when you see the little home next to it, there's people. If you press on people, the bottom on the middle button in the middle is find nearby. If you press there, you're gonna be able to find everybody that is here, and that is starting to make a community. So if you actually go outside and let's network and let's have coffee and desserts and let's get ready for a full afternoon, knowing that there's a network of support, there's a network of people that believe and that care. And I repeat it, there is a reason why you're all here. And it is because probably you have the calling, the power, and the responsibility to make a change for our Hispanic community. Thank you so much for being here.